please give it up for Chris Parks.
Yeah, well, thanks for everybody to come out this early in the morning to talk about death. We had to give this thing one last spin before, and I figured it makes for a really nice projection surface, so might as well just like hang out in this giant alligator. This is a space that we used for the Shine Mural Festival finale exhibit. And this, what I'm standing inside, is an artist duo named Yak and Shirio. And their vision was brought to life by my good friend Heinz Heinrich, who's in here somewhere, who built this insane beast. And this is all going to be getting torn down really soon, so cool to have everybody back in here for one last go with it. So thanks for showing up. And I wanted to do a little bit of an exercise with everybody together before I get started. This is something that I use a lot in my studio to sort of like center myself and get into the mood a little bit. So I was going to ask everybody to kind of do a little bit of an exercise with me together before we get into this kind of heavy topic. This is what's known as a Tibetan singing bowl. And the way that I've been using it, oh, there's Heinz. So the way that I've been using it is actually to allow your senses, to tune into your senses, to tune into your listening senses rather than listening to your mind. If everybody could just close your eyes to get started. Just close your eyes, and what we're going to do is listen to this sound of the bowl and just let your mind follow the sound and listen to it not just with your ears but with your whole awareness, and then listen to it as it merges into the sound of the silence or the ambient sound in the room, and sort of feel the space in the area here. So everybody just take a deep breath in and then exhale and just listen. Okay, come back. Or you can listen to the sound of the mic or the sound of the whatever is going on outside of the cement mixing company. So it's this idea of just sort of paying attention to your surroundings and sort of going outside of your normal thinking mind. And that's just a little bit of a taste of kind of what I'll be getting into today. Let me see if I can get this, my projections working here. I think I've been like clicking it around in my pocket while I've been fucking around up here. That's me? All right, so this morning I've been given the topic of death. Kind of a weird thing to like kind of stand up in front of people and talk about. And I'll be honest, I really can't remember my last death before I took incarnation as Chris Parks. So I fear I can't really talk about that too much. But what I can talk about is a practice that I've been using, which is known as a practice of ego death. And it's something that I've been using to sort of cultivate a space in myself in order to let creative inspiration come through and not just be sort of regurgitated over this sort of like cage that I put on myself, which is all of these things that I think that I'm good at or not good at or able to do or not able to do, or what people have told me about myself over the years. All of that is sort of just this baggage. And the talk that I've entitled it, Become Yourself. This is a phrase that I've been using. I originally heard it. It was from a 18th century mystic teacher named Gurdjieff, and the full phrase was, become yourself and God and the devil won't matter. And that's always been sort of a phrase that I've been thinking about and trying to understand. It perplexes me and fascinates me. I've been printing it on t-shirts. I've been working it into artwork that I've been making. I've been using it in gallery shows and sort of these conceptual shows that I've been putting together. Just trying to understand it better. And for me, what it points to is this idea that we're much more than our physical bodies. These physical bodies are just sort of a temporary phase that we're existing in right now. And becoming to understand more that we are these spiritual entities having a human existence inside this body, and that what we're experiencing in life now is just the other side of what we'll be experiencing in death. It's sort of like being on Earth, and the sun seems like it's going away and dying, but really the Earth is just spinning. It's just the other side of the planet. So that's what I'd like you to think about in the way that we're discussing death. It's not an end, but it is just another phase, a natural phase that everybody will experience. And since we're much more than our physical bodies, we're also much more than this collection of tendencies that we have. We're much more than this collection of things that we think we're capable of, and these limitations that we put on ourselves all the time. And you have to allow yourself to become greater than you are currently. You have to be okay with your friends wanting to keep you at a certain level, and you being okay to be yourself and growing this confidence that comes from outside your egos. Ego is a lot of time is struggle and fear. I think a lot of people think of it as this sort of arrogance, which I think is kind of like a runaway ego. When you're fully unaware, you're kind of, you're running on your ego fully, and you see that happen with a lot of people. But these things are all the ego. These aren't actually who we are. We're much more than our egos, and the idea is to, how do we break outside of the ego? How do we experience something new? How do we let in creative inspiration that's not just sort of like a collection of all these regurgitated, it's like a computer software, like an operating system. You're running on this operating system, and it's just sort of been like going at it without a programmer. You're just adding all of this baggage to yourself, and the operating system is capable of some things and it's not. So it's time to like upgrade it to version 2.0, 3.0, 4.0, and continue to make it larger. So I've been interested in ways that we can lose ourselves as well. So losing that sort of critiquing, nagging voice in our head that keeps us afraid, that keeps us from doing the things that we want to do. And we've all experienced this sense of ego loss. And I think we couldn't imagine our lives without it. We'd probably all kill ourselves if we didn't have these moments of temporary ego loss, like when you're watching live music and you lose yourself in the sound and the sights, when you're looking at incredible artwork and you become inspired. There's all kinds of things that these happen to us all the time, and I think it's important to appreciate them and learn ways to sort of cultivate those so that you don't have to be on vacation, you don't have to be falling in love. You can just, as an artist, I think of myself as someone who is a seeker. So because it's my job to be an artist and to create artwork daily, I can't really wait around for inspiration to just happen when I'm, like in a perfect situation, or I'm, out in nature and staring at a campfire, or, like I'm falling in love. You can stare into the eyes of your dog maybe and feel this sort of thing, but he's always running around. So I become really interested in finding these tools and methods that I can sort of put my trust in, and that will show up for me on a regular basis. But I am a little bit more far out than a lot of people. I take things a little bit further. I've become very comfortable with sort of metaphysical ideas and psychic spaces and these psychedelic realms. So there's a lot of things that I've been using over the years. The one early on that I got started with, I really wanted to learn to find out if lucid dreaming was possible, if it's possible to wake up inside of our dreams. It's something that we do each night. We all fall asleep and we have these dreams where we can taste, touch, feel, hear, experience. So that was a kind of a nice segue into to these things. I'll touch on that a little bit later. But other things that I've been becoming really interested in from there. Since this is a talk about death, I'm going to take it as license to get far out and talk about some things with you guys that I normally just talk about with close friends and other weirdos who are interested in this. But so I do about 4 times a year, I use strategically psilocybin mushrooms as part of my journey, as part of something that I can sort of shut down my ego with. I do what's called heroic doses of psilocybin mushrooms, which is 5 grams of mushrooms, and I've been inspired by people like Terence McKenna and others that have been using mushrooms in a very sacred way, using it in a way where it's a safe environment for myself. I'm not actually interacting with the outside world, but creating this inner space that I can go as far out as I like. That's been incredibly helpful for me to sort of keep like knocking me off of that well-beaten path or those patterns that I have. From there, the mushroom trips, I become very comfortable in that space and started to lead me towards getting interested in ancient and more ancient ways of using them. So it's led me also into really starting to explore Eastern philosophies, things like Buddhism. Really been interested lately. I've become kind of fascinated with the Tibetan Book of the Dead. It's also called the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. I'm barely scratching the surface on that. It's something that monks spend lifetimes digesting and understanding, but it's been something that's been very intriguing to me. I think it's hidden under the guise of a manual that you read to someone after post-mortem. You have this ritual where you read to somebody who's just recently died, but under that guise is actually a manual for living. It's a manual for being aware that death is just a part of life and that we're constantly going through these different phases of our lives, through dreaming states, through sleepless or through dreamless sleep stages as well, and then also our waking lives. So it become for me this way to fully let go of who I think I am and then be reborn into a new ego that is more of a design of my higher self rather than this sort of runaway train. And it's really allowed me to do things that I didn't think that I was capable of. And I'm not recommending that you guys do these sort of things. A couple other examples of things that I've been interested in. I've partaken in many ceremonies with a South American shaman doing what's called ayahuasca around a campfire. And that's something that as soon as I started hearing about it, and probably a lot of people are familiar with this, which is really fascinating to me, that the sort of attention that a lot of these really fringe ideas, when I was first getting into them, they're now kind of household names. A lot of people, how many people have heard of ayahuasca? It's crazy. So it was such a far out thing to get into, and now that everybody is starting to like hear about these things. For me, that was just an incredible way to reconnect with nature. I'm always working digitally. We have really fast-paced lives. I don't get to spend a lot of time in nature. So when I do spend time in nature, it's like I've spent 14 years in nature, communicated with Mother Nature, coming back, and I feel really like a rejuvenated sense of what's possible. I've used sensory deprivation tanks, float tanks. This is where you can immerse yourself in a tank of warm water that's heated exactly to your body temperature. You close the door and there's no longer any sight, there's no light, there's no sound. It's just you for a couple of hours floating with no body. And with practice, you can learn to fully drop your body and be exploring your subconscious. That's a really interesting way to do it, minus drugs. There's a lot of different things that you can try, like the singing bowl, I think was just like a nice little taste of that, where you can use these little techniques and then you start to use them in your regular life when you're walking around. You can just pause for a minute. Listen to the ambient sound in the room and sort of reconnect. So what I want to get across to you guys is that it's all about making this time for creative incubation. Making this time daily where you're showing up and you're looking for things to come into your life that otherwise wouldn't be there. And you get, like a lot of times you get those flashes of incredible moments with your friends or by yourself or out in nature, and you get inspired to become better than yourself currently. You get inspired to do incredible things, and then you come back to your normal day-to-day, and then that sort of passion fades. You get back around people that maybe are pulling you down, or your job or your life or all these different stresses are pulling you down. So I would recommend making time daily just to show up. And this is a quote by one of my favorite authors named Joseph Campbell, who's a mythologist. So what he does is compares mythology from cultures around the world, and they all seem to show similar stories and similar sort of collective consciousness ideas. He was actually also the inspiration for George Lucas to start the Star Wars saga. So really, really powerful author if you haven't heard of him. And this is a quote. So listen to this quote and sort of open yourself to this. You must have a room or a certain hour or so a day where you don't know what was in the newspapers that morning. You don't know who your friends are. You don't know what you owe anybody. You don't know what anybody owes you. This is a place where you can simply experience and bring forth what you are and what you might be. This is a place of creative incubation. At first, you may find that nothing happens here. But if you have a sacred space and you use it, something will eventually happen. And that's true. Like, if you keep showing up day to day, this is not like hoping that something will happen and living your regular life. This is having a space where you spend time alone every day and you're waiting for something to happen. It could be you get inspired to, today I'm going to do something outside of my norm. I'm going to write, I'm going to paint, I'm going to do something. So having this space, I use it for meditation a lot of times, or practicing certain things that I've been interested in practicing. It could lead you to anything, and it can fit in with your lifestyle. It doesn't have to be this shift where you have to change your whole life in order to do these things. You just make that creative space for yourself. And if you can find a closet or a hole or somewhere you go outside, a tree, something like that you can spend daily and get comfortable with that, I would highly recommend that. And that is this idea of creative incubation. So I can't say the benefits of that enough. There has also been some books that have been really helpful for me. There's a book called The Artist Way, which is super powerful. If anybody actually does what's in this book, The Artist Way, it's a workbook, and it gets you to start writing in the morning, and it gets you to start just stream of consciousness, laying out your things that you didn't even know that you were interested in or that you should be working on, and they start to come out from your subconscious. There's another one called The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield, which has been an incredible benefit to me, and I would recommend anybody who is an artist read that book. The audio book is incredible as well. I do a lot of audio while I'm drawing, so I'm always listening to audio books, and that's been a really crucial thing for developing a lot of change in my life as well. An example of this practically, the ways that I use a lot of these tools is, we were talking a little bit about the Shine Mural Festival, and that's something that, it's been such an incredible thing to be able to transform a city with art and artists, and to bring in some of our heroes into this city that they may have never heard of or never would have come here on their own, but are just really inspired by this area and these this small city that's doing incredible things. It's full of artists and people who are appreciating the work. We hear over and over that this city is more appreciative of the work, and they're more interested in what we're doing than anywhere else on the planet, and they paint all over the place. So that's just kudos to everybody here for just being interested, Yeah. So very cool. So when we got started on this project, I had no idea what I was getting into. I'll say that for sure. You know, like I'm not a mural artist. I paint them from time to time with a lot of help from friends. Most of the time I spend is just sitting in a dark hole drawing stupid things. I don't really get out, and so it's been a journey for me. There were so many things that I was doing this year that I could have never dreamed of doing before I started this project. So really, like, conquering fears is something that I've been interested in. Standing in front of you guys talking about this stuff is definitely a conquering of fear for me. Like, I'm not comfortable doing this sort of thing, but I'm interested in getting over things that I'm not comfortable with. So I would recommend doing that. As terrible as it sounds, just keep charging forward, because it's the ego telling you that you can't do it. It's not the ego that you need an ego in order to get in front of everybody in a giant alligator. This is also the point of this. It's like talking about ego death standing in a giant alligator, you know, like blowing smoke out. So it's not about you losing your identity or losing your creativity or losing what makes you an individual. It's about losing that shit that's getting blocked and getting in the way of you becoming your best self. So another sort of example, and I don't know how long I'm going here, so hopefully I'm well around the right place. I had, about 3 years ago, maybe a little bit longer than that, I had a full hip replacement surgery. I also share that with Heinz. We both had full hip replacement surgeries. You can attest to how that changes your life from cripply walking around with a terrible back. But during that state, it's something that I always knew that I had to get. Throughout my whole life, I've had hip problems, and I always dreaded having to go through this hip surgery. But when I fully committed to having to go through the surgery, I had started to kind of become interested in a lot of these. I was starting with meditation, starting to dabble with different ideas, but I saw this as, okay, an opportunity. How can I actually enjoy this time? Because you get 8 weeks with nobody bothering you, which is incredible. And Michelle, my wife, is caring for me and taking care of me and all this kind of stuff. So I was able to just have this 8 weeks where I could explore all of these crazy ideas and books that I've been reading, and trying to learn Japanese, or that's where I started to really dabble with the lucid dreaming. It's like, okay, here's my chance. I have 8 weeks of full nap privileges every day. I can fall asleep rather than watching TV or sort of getting stuck back into what was going on in the outside world. I spent that as this creative incubation time. Yes, you can wake up in your dreams. I would highly recommend just Google that and learn how to do it. It's one of the most fun things that you can do. It does take a lot of practice, but if you got time to nap, make that nap count. It's really, really a fun thing to do. And so that really led me into where I'm kind of headed now today, that sort of time period where I was creating artwork from a different space than I had been doing it before. I started creating artwork based on this lucid dreaming process that I was going through, and wanted to, as soon as it was probably a stupid thing, right after you've been out for 8 weeks of surgery, to do a gallery show of a bunch of stuff in St. Pete that's likely not to sell, that's too expensive for anybody to buy anyway, and just throw all your money away on that when you should be diving back in. But I felt very strongly about this. I had this vision of these plexiglass pieces, and these are layers, so a lot of these have 6 layers of plexiglass, and I wanted to print on the plexiglass and have it cut and then assemble it back to create this sort of idea around dreaming. So kind of dream catchers in here to sort of clue people in. When I was working with lucid dreaming, a lot of the pieces, I think that what kind of creates the richness of them that people really don't have to know about, but when you're going from that space of laying in your bed, about to merge into a dream world, it starts out as this sort of blank gray blocks, no color, no pattern. And then as you keep your focus and you keep your mind awake and your body is starting to fall asleep and you merge into that REM sleep world, boom, everything turns into colorful patterns. your imagination comes to life in front of you. And I was practicing with creating this imaginary world that I would visit all the time, and I would imagine these different spaces that had artwork on the walls, and I was looking at the artwork inside the dream, and then coming back and trying to like work that into the pieces. This is one that was called Calm the Dreamer, just based on this idea of keeping your body asleep while you're having this like fascinating time. You can actually, it's this weird world that you're in where you're having this sort of heart-racing experience inside the dream, but you need to keep your body asleep. So it's something that you can use in your regular life when you're so not getting fully caught up in it, but still having that place where you're keeping that sort of calm, centered place where this is just about astral travel, traveling in dreams, but keeping your body and your heart rate very calm. This has also led me into where my art is going now, with becoming very interested in things that I had a taste of a long time ago, where Michelle and I had been going on trips to Asia. We go to Bangkok, Thailand. We've been to Japan and to China. And I've become really inspired by the artwork there. That's really what made me want to become an illustrator, seeing the temples and seeing the paintings in the murals and all of this kind of stuff inside the temples and this sacred artwork. I never really understood it, but I had always been completely fascinated by it. And now, as I started to work these practices into my life, I'm creating artwork from a new place where it's allowing me to spend time with ideas that I've been interested in, like the skate decks here. This is Garuda, Ganesha, Hanuman, and these guardian giants that stand in front of the temples in Thailand. And they all have this sort of esoteric meanings that you can sort of gain from surrounding yourself and understanding the mythologies. So what I'm doing currently is I'm creating these pieces based on this idea of guru meditation. When I first heard of this term guru, it really kind of threw me off, thinking of a man in a robe that's like sort of brainwashing you and this sort of an idea. But the more I started to learn about these, what's really hidden behind the guru meditation is that after you start to spend time with these things and you start to learn about the myths and the deities, you can get to know them by meditating on them. So I've been hearing that this is possible. So doing meditations based on the different deities, like the first one that really struck me, that came to be something that very interesting to me, was Ganesha. And there's a lot of really interesting stories and mythologies about Ganesha. And they're almost kind of told as like children's tales, and they're very simple on the surface. But the more you listen to them, the more you get familiar with the deity and the ideas behind them. You start to gain this sort of like awareness and aha moments that come from it. So while I'm drawing, so I have meditations on the deity. I'm interested in drawing the deity. I listen to mythologies based around the deity. So I'm really just trying to be in the room with it at the same time. And Ganesha is a really interesting one to start if anybody's... I use Audible a lot, and I was like, oh, can I just start to look up these different deities, just typing in their names, and there'll be like all these epics and stories like the Ramayana and all these things that you can... The Ramayana really got me interested in Hanuman, who is a monkey king, who is really God in a monkey form here on earth to do work. But he doesn't know that he's God. He keeps forgetting that he's God. But when he is reminded that he actually is God, he's like, oh yeah, I can fly across the ocean and land on the other side and save Sita. All he has to do is realize who he really is in order to become God on earth. So it's this idea that we're all God incarnate. We are these physical beings, and God has created all of this in a way that he can look outside of he can use your eyes as windows, and he can experience all of this stuff, this interesting stuff that's going on. So if you can just use that as a thought experiment, I don't really care if you believe in God or not. I don't know what even that word means. It's just that apparently there's a lot of things out here, and apparently waveforms and matter are the same thing. So it's not all as hard as we think it is. Everything that's in this room, you are just this vibrating pattern matter is not really there when you start to zoom down into it. So really, everything that you see is a reflection of your own mind. So if you can cultivate your mind to be a beautiful place, then everything you see around you, no matter how grim it looks to everyone else, can be beautiful to you as well. So that is basically it for me. So cool. Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
I've definitely thought about like waking life and lucid dreaming. Are there any methodologies that you've used that have been more successful? I've tried the dot on the hand.
What did you try?
The doing the dot on your hand or on your palm, because if you look at it enough times during the day and you kind of give yourself like awake checks or dreaming checks, you can like. If you wake up and like it's not on your hand, then you're dreaming. But it's really hard to like do that every day. And if you get a tattoo of it, will you just assimilate that into I have it now and like? Yeah.
So there are lots of different ways, and it's really cool now with like all of these things becoming more popular and with the technology and with the internet. I was researching a lot of different ways to do it. There are things called binaural beats. Have anybody heard of binaural beats or brainwave entrainment, that sort of an idea? I would get this soft headband that had headphones in it, and as I'm falling asleep, first thing that I was trying was lucid dream hypnosis, and that was hands down the best way that I've tried. It's very awkward at first, like getting to sleep while you're listening to this weirdo like give you these like spooky sounding hypnosis. But if you can just like tune that out, what it was doing for me, it was every night it was having me walk through the same steps as I fall asleep, imagining the same space, imagining the same world over and over and over. And it starts out as just imagination, like you're starting out by just imagining what the world looks like, and then you fall asleep and you're like, shit, I'm very familiar with this place, and then all of a sudden, you can manipulate it, you can be inside of it, you can walk around. I was like just kind of this sort of like distant island that I was hanging out in. I would like ride a boat across a river and then land there, and it would just be this island that belonged to me. That was my most fun one. I would do a lot of times, like they would say, one that worked for me is you would look at your hands and you'd count your fingers. 5 fingers, okay, this is real life. Cool. If you keep doing that over and over inside your dream, I would do that. I would be like, okay, this is kind of weird. Okay, let me look at my hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh shit, and then wake up because you're like, ah, So like numbers and like working. A lot of times, what would be a trigger for me is I would be like in a dream trying to use my iPhone, and it would not work and do anything that I wanted it to do, and that would be like, okay, I'm dreaming, because we're always doing this with our phone. I think that'll be the first thing that you start doing is like trying to use your phone or a computer, and then you'll be like, this doesn't work. So yeah, that would be a couple that I would try. Yeah, look up Audible if you have an Audible account. You can like download lucid dreaming hypnosis. You can probably find them on YouTube and stuff like that too. Yeah. Cool.
Chris, I have a question.
Else?
Over here. It's me.
There's a lot of
You're
echoes
dreaming.
in here. There's a lot of echoes. Not right now. It is. Yeah. I trip 4 times a year. Most of the time I'm completely sober except for marijuana. It's not in the morning usually.
How did you know like this was working? So you started doing these techniques to try to like open your mind and get more creative. Was there a time where you were like, hey, like look at me, I'm more creative, or I'm having these ideas that I really never would have had before? Or is it just a big, long journey?
No, they're very much like these like visions or like, oh, I gotta do this, And I get a little bit carried away. I'm getting better at now like getting a vision and then going, I have to do this, and then going, okay, does this, as I'm getting older and starting to learn, it's like I have these sort of like, you get a lot of these ideas that pop into your head. Not all of them are something that you should do, but ways to weigh it is that when these creative visions and inspirations are coming in, like you almost get like a body high, like a tingly sensation when it's like the right thing for you to be doing. And also, if you can wake up in the morning and write down, like if you have something that you really want to do, you get an inspirational idea or something like that. If you can wake up in the morning and write it down 15 times every single day for a certain period of time until it starts happening, that's one way to do it. Because if you can't write it down in your journal every day, you're probably not that into it. It's probably not something you should be doing. So I found a good way to kind of like get those inspirations, but not get so carried away that you go too far out into the woods.
Who else?
Anybody else?
Oh, can always count on Thomas.
Hello. In the spirit of death, what would you like written on your tombstone?
Say that again?
In the spirit of death, what would you like written on your tombstone?
Cremate me. That's expensive. Maybe that. Should have cremated me. That's too expensive. Yeah, definitely. God damn it, I said cremate me. Maybe. Yeah.
Hi. So when we walked in here, we wrote down our greatest fears, and
Yeah.
I remember flipping through The Art of War like a long time ago, and it's kind of about fear and resistance. So, one, those moments that you described in lucid dreaming where you're like, "Wah!" and you wake up, that's, I think, a moment I would struggle with conquering in that sort of staying
In the
asleep
lucid
through
dream
that
practice?
fear. So bridging that, I had a question about what was bridging that like, and then also if you wrote down your greatest fear, what was it?
Yeah. Like I know, like, because I'll do some of these things with some friends, and I know early on, kind of venturing out into the unknown, like diving into your subconscious a lot of times can be a very kind of frightening place. And it's really just because we've got all this clutter in there that's been building up and it hasn't been dealt with. It's like going into a room that you haven't cleaned for 30 years, and now you're in there just like, oh man, it's so messy in here, So diving into those worlds initially can be very frightening, but what I was trying to keep in mind is that this is all a creation of my own mind. There's nothing outside of me that's doing this, It's not a scary place to be. It's just about keeping that focus, and keeping calm. And that can be relatable to like being out in this fucking crazy world we're in right now. That seems like the apocalypse, but it's not. It's the cycle. It's just going to be happening over and over. The planet will be around even if we're not. It continues to go on. But it can get very frightening a lot of times, and definitely exploring your own mind is a frightening place. But I've always been somebody that likes to sort of, well, not likes it, but I decided to sort of charge into things that I'm afraid of. And what I wanted to write on mine initially was public speaking, Like I think that's sort of like probably a lot of you guys in here too, it's like a scary thing to sort of like try to put into words things that are important to you, because it's hard to have them come out the way that you intended. But as like what I settled on was really like my biggest fear is like embarrassment, Like I think that was like the bigger thing that would keep me from sort of doing something like this, is like just worrying about what other people think of you or being embarrassed of, like that sort of thing. So yeah, like I get embarrassed easily. So that's really like, but naturally I have an inclination to like go head first into these sort of like psychic realms that I seem to enjoy and be comfortable with. So I'm trying to like use that in a way where I can go out and then bring something back. I think that's helpful. Does that help at all? Yeah.
coming. Thank you for a great year.